I would I would say take the time to do some inward reflection. Take the time to figure out exactly what makes you passionate. If you're going to be if you have a career and it's outside of uniform, when your feet hit the floor every morning, you need to be able to get behind a mission. So I recommend to everybody to do that due diligence. When you're looking at an opportunity or an organization, really look under the hood. Try to get a good understanding of culture. Make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you. Otherwise, you're going to end up dissatisfied at some point, and we'll be here. We'll be here if you need to make that pivot. But we want to make sure that we can connect you with something really meaningful on the front end, but only you know what you're passionate about. So I would challenge anybody listening to just make sure that you're doing your own due diligence and doing that soul searching to find out what motivates you.
Good morning, good afternoon, or wherever it is that you are today. Welcome to the TAA Cafe. This podcast is brought to you by the Reserve Component Transition Assistance Advisor Program. With Reserve Component Transition Assistance Advisors in every state and territory, RCTAAs are there to provide service members and veterans with information and assistance in accessing their military benefits and entitlements that they have earned and deserve through their military service. And now this podcast is part of our series on veteran employment. And my name is Daniel Leatherman. I'm the RCTAA from Hawaii, and I'm joined by my colleague, Shondria Alexander, who is the RCTAA from Alabama. Good morning, Shondria.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to host with you today, Dan.
Yes, wonderful. Well, today our special guests in the cafe really are from RecruitMilitary. Here we have Chris Newsome, who is a senior vice president at RecruitMilitary, and he is joined by his colleague Renee Garrett-Storrs. Good morning to you both.
Good morning to you, Dan.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Well, it's morning where I am. I think it's afternoon. We're all in different time zones here. So as I said in my intro, I'm here in Hawaii. It is morning for me. And Shondria, I think you're in Alabama, so it's some other time there. It's afternoon, I think. Yeah. And for sake of context, we're here in December. I won't say what the temperature is outside, but I know wherever it is you are, it's cold. So. Okay, that was a joke. I guess it fell flat. We'll see. Anyway. So today we've been doing this. You're actually helping us to kick off a new series on employment and veterans employment. And there are a number of different resources that are certainly available to our veterans as service members, and whether they're currently actively serving, or they have separated and are transitioning back to civilian life or another career. Tell us a little bit about RecruitMilitary. I'll just kind of throw it over to our guests and let you take it away. Tell us a little bit about RecruitMilitary and your organization and more.
Yeah, thank you, Dan and Shondria. Honestly, it's a privilege and honor to be on the show and to be a part of a really meaningful conversation. Employment tends to be a considerable stress point, regardless if you're transitioning from active duty now, if you're a member of the Guard, of the Reserve. It's a human condition. We need to be able to provide sustenance for ourselves, for our families, put a roof over our head, food on the table. So the topic of employment never comes lightly. So here at RecruitMilitary, our mission in life is to ensure that employment is not a barrier, or rather that there's no barriers between you, the service member, or the military family member, and employment. So we work specifically with organizations of all shapes and sizes, of all walks of life, every industry, every vertical that you can think of, thousands and thousands of these companies that specifically want to hire and retain military talent. So instead of looking at, this massive market of opportunities and candidates, we hone in on our niche, on our brothers and sisters and their family members to ensure that they have access to those meaningful employment opportunities. So tactically at RecruitMilitary, there's three primary verticals that we utilize to facilitate that connection between the two audiences. We do a lot of high impact, low stress, and I want to stress that low stress, but really high impact hiring events that we do all across the country, even the globe. In some instances, we do a lot of virtual events as well to make sure that everybody, regardless of zip code, regardless of timeline, if you're stationed to CONUS, that there's something for you. We have organizations, these companies lined around the block that specifically want to talk to you. So hiring events tend to be a real tactical impact vertical that we utilize to make that connection. And then to complement that, we have what we consider to be the largest sole purpose job board or career portal in the space. So we have hundreds of thousands of open opportunities that servicemen and women and their family members can source, apply to. You can find opportunities based on where you want to live, where you live now. Keywords, you can even search by your MOS. And this portal, again, is housing hundreds of thousands of opportunities that are coming specifically from these companies that have stood up, raised their hand and said, I specifically want to hire talent coming from the military community. So those are the two primary vehicles. And then the third, but one of the really high impact ones, is our placement services. So some companies will come to us and say, we're looking for a relatively unique candidate, or in some cases, perhaps their team, their HR team, their recruiting team isn't robust enough to really dive in a big way. So we kind of serve as that force multiplier for them. We go out, we identify candidates that are the right fit for that job requisition. We interview them. We go through all of the pre-screening, ensure that job seeker from the military community understands the organization, the culture, the compensation, benefits, you name it. It's a really cradle to grave sort of service that we offer. So between those three pillars, there's really something for just about anybody. So regardless of what you want to do, what you have done, what you want to do moving forward, we've got some level of professional representation within our ecosystem.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing. It's so broad. And you said that you have these high impact, kind of low stress events, these hiring events. Talk about the other side, the low stress side, for the service member, about accessing them, and what would be their experience kind of going into one of these events?
Sure. So everything kind of starts with a pre-registration. So for everything that I just mentioned, whether it's hiring events, our career portal, or placement services, it starts with one creating a professional profile. It's not unlike Indeed, LinkedIn, an outfit like that, where you're telling the world who you are, what you've done, and what you're looking to do moving forward. So it takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes to create a robust professional profile. And that'll be everything from where are you, what's your contact information, down to a very granular level of what are your work preferences, what's your future work interest, are you willing to travel for work, some very military specific questions as well, MOS, branch, rank, schools, do you have an active security clearance? And this allows not just us, but the employers that we work with to truly get a well-rounded understanding of who you are as a professional and where they could potentially plug you in to their organization. So with that profile, simply by virtue of having that and registering for a hiring event, you're announcing your presence to these employers that are going to be there at the event itself. They have preliminary access, meaning they can see you, they can see your profile, they can review your resume, they can share opportunities with you before the event even takes place. To really hone in on that low stress element, most of these recruiters are coming from the military community themselves. Mm-hmm. When we are working with a company and being consultative to them, we encourage them to just, gun deck the system just a little bit, bring in some military talent on your recruiting team. This audience, our demographic, we're not terribly different than a standard candidate in terms of what we want out of a professional career: merit-based, performance-based, upward mobility or opportunities, the ability to provide for our families, that sort of thing. But otherwise, we want to help these companies understand that this doesn't have to be a riddle to solve. This is not a Rubik's Cube. Provide
Mm-hmm.
a meaningful opportunity and environment and watch these men and women excel. Because what is different about our demographic relative to the rest of the community is that we've had these traits, these attributes, virtues, and values instilled in us since day one of basic training or boot camp. So right out the gate, there's a top tier of talent that stems from the military community. So we help these companies understand that, embrace that, and bring somebody that kind of speaks the language. You don't have to know everybody's MOS. You don't have to know all of the ins and outs of every single branch, but general cultural understanding, and when you have a prior service member that's representing a corporate brand talking to other service members that are about to go through that transition, it's a recommendation from one service member to another. And that's really meaningful. That's impactful. That takes the thing, the dynamic so much further than applying and praying or posting and praying and hoping that you're found or your number comes up. So we work with these companies to make sure they understand the audience. We make sure both parties are kind of prepared for that interaction so that it goes beyond what I would kind of tongue-in-cheek call speed dating. You go to a career fair, if you don't know the other person, they don't know you, you're going to get somewhat of a cookie cutter pitch. Here's my 30-second elevator pitch. Company's going to do the same thing. Then they're going to orient you towards, their career portal to submit an application. So we try to help all parties understand the conversation that they need to have so that when they meet in the middle, it's a good conversation and it has an actual outcome. There's a follow-up, an interview has been scheduled or an offer has been made. There are next steps that have been defined and rolled out. So that's the sort of work that we do to try to create that environment that's very welcoming and familiar to the service members that are on, they're going through this for the first time. So we don't know what we don't know on the front end there. So we try to do our best to create low stress.
Thank you for that, Chris. In preparation for our conversation today, I went to the RecruitMilitary site and I did sign up, and you're right. It was very easy to do. I was pleasantly surprised at the depth of the questions that were being asked. Like you said, I wasn't prepared. Like, okay, security clearance. Like, when was my last, clearance date or what? Some of these kinds of things. But it was very detailed and very, oriented to that. I guess what I'm saying is, in speaking to that, one of the things that occurred to me as I was listening to you in relation to signing up is that this is not just for, veterans who have had a long and storied career, right? I mean, here I am. I mean, just using me as an example, I went to the site. I have 28 years of military service, but that's not to say that this isn't for the veteran and service member who's only just served. Hey, they've done their 6 years or whatever it might be, and now they're ready to kind of to leave military life at this point and move forward. So this is, it covers kind of that whole thing, doesn't it?
It really does. And, as I know that you experienced during your time in uniform and as a leader, life happens. I was a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne. I had a handful of buddies that got taken out of the fight, if you will, because of a jump injury. A broken leg or, an injury that maybe they couldn't bounce back from. And in some cases we have, battle buddies that are being medically discharged, and we need to consider their dynamic, their experience as well. They may be, the ripe old age of 20 years old, as an E1, E3, something along those lines. Right. But again, the work that we do with these companies to help them understand the demographic, it's, hey, still, while this individual may not have had decades in uniform, and I myself did not have decades in uniform, I did a single enlistment term, transitioned as a non-commissioned officer, E5 type, and infantry. I struggled to make some of those translations for my skill sets. I know a lot of our brothers and sisters do the same thing, or go through the same plight, if you will, regardless of time in service, time in rank, MOS, and all that. So yes, our ecosystem is truly structured to accommodate just about anybody. And I want to make sure that I emphasize that, there are civilians exceptions to the rule. Military spouses, next of kin, we consider them to be part of the military community. They have served in their own capacity, military spouses above and beyond in most cases. So we want to make sure that we have an ecosystem and a ready and willing party of employers that understand that and don't have to really wrap their brains around how do I fit these individuals into the organization or the culture. It's very natural. It's seamless because we're there helping them make those transitions or translations rather, and sometimes and giving them the cliff notes as to, you know, here's how you talk to these folks. Here's how you open the box and really see what's inside.
Okay, awesome. So Chris, I have a question for you. And just for clarity, if I heard correctly, RecruitMilitary is basically global, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And so my question is, how does your organization ensure that service members or veterans in rural areas have the same access and those that are not in rural areas? And I ask this question because maybe about in September, we had a meeting here in my state, in the state of Alabama, and we were trying to determine how could organizations, the resources that are out there for service members, veterans, and their families can bridge that gap to service members that are in rural areas that may not have the access, like I said, to those that are not to the resources, not aware of what's out there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it's something that we field on a pretty regular basis, and that's why our operation is scaled and structured the way that it is. That's why we don't just have one vertical, one primary focus. Peel back all the layers. Our core competency is connectivity. We facilitate the connection between the job-seeking member from the military community and that company that specifically wants to hire and retain them. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. You know, I mentioned our hiring events. The hiring events are not the solution for everybody, and it can't be because we're not physically in every single market. We're not in every single state. We have a really nice, pretty robust blend of events that are held on installations, that are held in cities, as well as the virtual offering that we have. But the beauty of most of this, again, stems from that ecosystem, our career portal, which is where you are initially creating that professional profile and uploading your resume. That is the most target-rich environment, is the best way I can explain it to somebody from our community. We let technology take over where we can't, be in every single place, every zip code, et cetera. You have service members that are in very remote areas, when they're serving in the Guard and Reserve, and we want to make sure they're not overlooked. So we have yet to encounter a single individual or a zip code where there isn't representation of opportunities for them. It doesn't matter if you're in, the nooks and crannies of the Dakotas or, anywhere throughout Alabama. We have a robust array. We have thousands and thousands of opportunities across every single state. So again, by virtue of that professional profile, you're on the radar just by virtue of that, because the system is algorithmically combing at all times and identifying service members' future work interests, those data points that we were just talking about, and doing matchmaking with the employers. So as a service member has access to this ecosystem, thousands of recruiters have the same access. They're looking for these job seekers. They're looking for them in every corner of the country and the world in many cases. So your service members in the great state of Alabama will be found in many cases. They can be passive job seekers simply by having that professional profile. Our system will do that matchmaking. We'll pair them with local opportunities that categorically fit what they want to do moving forward. So we do leverage a lot of technology. We build it all in-house. We have our own development team, our own engineers, and we build this infrastructure to specifically address that sort of issue, because we know that not everybody can make it to a hiring event. So so I would say it's a blend between the way that we're structured with those three verticals, as well as the technology that we leverage to make sure that nobody's left behind.
Okay. Awesome. So I have one additional question. So for dependents that are seeking employment, would the process be the same with them utilizing your website to create a profile?
Yes, the process is exactly the same. There does come a portion where it's basically asking your status. Are you service member? Are you a family member? So we identify as such so that we can, kind of compartmentalize our candidate base. But yes, the registration process is identical. You're simply selecting family member as opposed to I'm Army, National Guard, or Air Force, or whatever, branch might come to mind. So yes, identical process.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarity.
Sure.
Thanks, Shondria. So it's interesting you mentioned technology, Chris. So I'm not I'm a little bit nerdy. I'll just admit to that. So I have a passing interest in tech and technology. So this question is somewhat relevant given the fact that on the back end side of the RecruitMilitary, right? So this is after you've submitted you've set up your profile, you've submitted your resume, and you're saying that the technology is there kind of constantly working in the background.
Yep.
I guess my question is, with the use of with some, well, I don't even know how to phrase this question because I'm doing it in, obviously we're doing it in real time. This is not one that I had kind of preloaded here.
I like these though. It's fine.
My question is around the use of the technology, and really is there anything that our service members can do to help maximize that interface, right? To kind of, because one of the things that we hear, I mean, as transition assistance advisors, in referring service members to organizations such as yours and Work for Warriors and a number of different HR recruiters, many of whom are using in companies are using AI and are using apps and programs and technology to really pre-screen their candidates, right? And they're looking for things like keywords and word structures and I won't say formats, but they're looking for key elements within resumes, within profiles, to help provide the optimal candidate for that organization. And I realize that may be a little bit, now this may be really in the weeds, but it also may be really specific to that job or that company that you might be wanting to seek, or at the same time, here you are with RecruitMilitary, with other organizations that provide this interface, this connection, right? As you say, how is there anything that a service member can do at this stage, right? At this search place in creating a resume or whatever it is that they're uploading or inputting in their profile, not to be fraudulent, right? I mean, we don't want to say we walk on water and we chew gum and jump rope at the same time or whatever it is that we do. But I think you kind of get a sense of where
I get it.
You can kind of speak a little bit to that.
Yeah.
That maximizing the technology and our ability to take advantage of the algorithms that are out there. That are
absolutely. And honestly, I think this is borderline a perfect segue into that topic, because everything that we're doing, everything that we're talking about here is we're all still operating within this highly technologically advanced environment in 2023, 2024, just moving forward, it only gets a little crazier. AI can be a double-edged sword. It can be immensely helpful. It can be immensely dangerous. It depends on how you wield some of these tools. So with RecruitMilitary, again, I mentioned we are technology driven. We want to make sure that we're relevant, that our technology is on par, not just with other outfits within this space, within the military employment space, but the greater employment space. Despite us being niche, we still have to keep in mind we are competing with the larger, the non-military centric entities that have billions and billions of dollars to invest in, the race towards perfection, which will never happen, but it's still a race. So we accept and we onboard these changes as they come down the line. You go into our ecosystem right now, one of the first things you're going to see on recruitmilitary.com is a chatbot is going to pop up. We have artificial intelligence that's tied into the back end of that to help the individual get going with their search, to get their profile started. It's a support tool, but it uses AI. We also have Google's machine learning, which is a form of AI, on the back end of our job board. So the simplest way that I can explain this is, when you go to Google, you can plug in a couple words, maybe an obscure sentence. It doesn't even have to be coherent, 99% of the time you find exactly what you're looking for on page 1 of the search results, because Google's machine learning takes the billions and billions of searches and habits that have been done before your search, and it basically recognizes what you're most likely looking for based on the behavior of those that came before you. So it optimizes it. It's an optimized search yield. We took the same technology, we partnered with Google a few years back, and we have that same sort of technology on the back end of our board. And that's what allows us, if you recall, I mentioned you can even search by your MOS. You can plug in your MOS and the system will return relevant opportunities in line with your MOS, because that AI and that machine learning understands what the MOS is. Now, it's not going to say you were this, therefore you're going to be that, because that's where it's a double-edged sword. We don't want servicemen and women to think that just because they had that MOS, that is the only thing that they can do, that they're a one-trick pony, they're destined to stay down that line. We want to show them, no, that the world is your, it's your oyster. You can, there's a lot of opportunities here, but what the system will do is it will do a quasi-translation and understanding of that MOS. It will bring back relevant roles. I mentioned I was infantry. It'll bring back some of those maybe security-oriented roles, policing, things along those lines, roles that I actually did when I initially transitioned. But it's also going to look at what others with my same MOS have ended up applying to. And it incorporates that behavior into the search yield. So we're pulling all this technology in to make sure that, again, we can have both parties really meet in a meaningful way in the middle. And as a service member, my challenge to you would be to take your time while you're filling out that profile. That is your way to initially announce your presence to the workforce. Lead with your best foot forward. Everybody thinks that it's just a numbers game. If I submit enough applications, I'll get enough callbacks, and from that, I'll get interviews. The funnel keeps getting narrower and narrower. But in reality, if you understand the technological world that we live in, you can not manipulate, but you can modify certain things like your profile, like your resume, to be able to stand out as an ideal candidate. An example would be simply targeting your resume. We offer, and I'll let Renee kind of speak to this. We have a series of additive workshops that we offer to make sure these men and women are properly prepared to make that great first impression. But most people don't understand that the reason you do or don't get a call back is 90% of the time based on how you've worded your resume. Did you target it for that specific role? Meaning, stay away from general resumes unless you're going for a general role. If you're going for a specific resume, you need to blend in language that's from that job description into your resume, not in an arbitrary way, not randomly, but find ways to sync that in with something in your summary at the top of your resume, into work experience, things along those lines. It's not terribly hard to do, and some of the workshops we provide give you that guidance as to how to do that. But your resume, once it's submitted, it gets scanned through a system. It goes through what's called an applicant tracking system, an ATS. Every company uses it right now to streamline their consideration for candidates. So if your resume is written in a general way, a recruiter scans it, and your words and the structure of that resume don't really align well with the language and the formatting of that job description, you might be the perfect candidate, but you didn't draft your resume the right way. So it's going to spit back, Staff Sergeant Smith is only a 35% match with this role. You're not going to get a call back in some cases. And that can be heartbreaking, or worse, confusing. Service members don't understand. Any candidate doesn't understand when they don't get the call back, especially if they're confident. But understanding that, hey, the way that you're building out your resume to speak specifically to that organization and role is paramount. I can't stress it enough how important that is. And then when you get into our particular system within our profile, you have a section where we're asking you to outline your skills associated with your MOS, skills associated with anything that you did while in service or previous work experience. We tend to see that if we don't nudge the individual, they'll kind of phone it in, maybe put a couple keywords in there, but it's important for everybody to understand that those keywords are part of the algorithm that we're using to do the matchmaking. So just take the time to really flesh out those skill sets. And we even go further as far as, how we steward each service member. When you start a profile with us, one of our team members is going to call you. We will call every single one of you that creates a profile, and we're going to help nudge you in that right direction. And that's a topic that we do touch on every single call. So we're there to put safety nets there, to blend in that technology, to really, again, just streamline this process, because we don't know what we don't know. Service members don't necessarily always understand what are modern day best practices as I'm going for my next career. So between the system, the workshops, the team members that we have, we really try to do, that white glove treatment for just about anybody that we encounter.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yes, I did get a phone call, by the way.
Oh, good. All right, it works.
Yeah, it works.
Thank you for the validation there.
Renee, I do want to bring you in here. Can you speak to a little bit more about that resume kind of building thing? Because I got a lot of gray hair, right? And so I'm coming out of that era where at least speaking for myself, I don't know how. I mean, these are rusty skills that I don't know how to refashion a resume, or maybe for some service members, this is really their first big foray into finding a new job, right? I mean, the military, they graduated from high school, perhaps they went right into the military. They've served a period of enlistment or a commission obligation, and now they've got to take that next leap. Maybe they're not sure where they want to go, what they want to do, if they want to stay in the MOS or the military occupational specialty. And for those of us on the Air Force side, that's called an AFSC, an Air Force specialty code. But it's still, for those that maybe they want to stay in that career field, or maybe they want to move. But yeah, can you talk about how does like RecruitMilitary help service members really kind of get into that, get their foot in the door? Because as Chris said, the technology will just kind of do its thing, and it will spit out a potential match. And it has nothing to do with the person personally. It has everything to do with the math, frankly, and the algorithm and the probability of the search criteria that's being put in.
Well, one of the ways I really like how the technology works for the job seeker is within the professional profile. Candidates have the option to upload not just one, but 2 resumes. So wherever they're starting from, we have a resume generation tool that does just that. It takes the technology, it takes the data points, all of the information that's been input into the profile, and it creates a resume. So we use that as a real example in the transition space. When somebody is new to all of this, they don't have a resume, they can use the resume generation tool, which will also put it into a Microsoft Word document. That way it becomes evergreen. They can take it to a DOL workshop. They have something, and it attaches to the profile. So that's one of the features I really like that's within the professional profile. To enhance that, we have additive classes, we have services to make sure that they are on trend. And I mean that because things change so quick. Just last week, we received some guidance regarding the federal resume and application process. So we immediately want to make sure that that is addressed and, facing forefront to our job seekers. So we do offer workshops. We offer them, all time zones. So OCONUS, Korea, Pacific, and they're the additive classes that also support the transition assistance program. So we have 2, we have the federal resume and we have the advanced resume workshop. And then we have a advanced employment workshop, which encompasses salary negotiation, skills development, interview techniques, dress for success. So it's all of those modules combined into a 90-minute delivery. And it's very consumable, it's bite-sized. We use DOL instructors who have live conversations, they're asking questions. And what I like best about it is because it's open to the military community, you're getting a mix of the veteran population, military spouse, the transitioning service member. So the questions are really relevant. So that is something I would highly recommend to a job seeker that is actively pursuing employment, to go ahead and make sure that they are prepared.
That's tremendous. Now, you did mention spouses. Just to kind of reiterate, and I know we probably should have said this right as we were going in. The services at RecruitMilitary are for any service member, right? So it's not like you have to have some kind of pre-qualifying eligibility, 180 days of Title 10 or anything like that, right? We're here, and come get a job.
Correct. Lifetime access, transitioning service members, spouses, members of the Guard and Reserve, as well as their dependents.
Wow, that's tremendous. That's tremendous. I wonder if this isn't a good time for us to kind of switch over and maybe take a look at the site. And if you could walk us, I won't say give us a full orientation there. I know that there are so many things there, but just Katie, thank you, who's our tech behind the scenes here. What are we looking at? What are we looking at now?
So you are looking at the professional development workshops, so the additive classes, so the live webinars, the advanced, the federal, as well as the advanced employment workshop. So that will give you a little bit of information about each workshop, and it will also show you the time that it's offered. So as you can see, as you peruse the list, you'll see that we are offering it many times in many locations to serve our military community.
Yeah, we're doing roughly 12 to 20 sessions every month to, again, primarily cover down on all time zones, but there's really three core workshop offerings. That is the advanced resume workshop, federal resume workshop, and advanced employment. So on the left side there, you're seeing our resume classes, and on the right side, that is the advanced employment workshop, which is really an amalgamation of about 4 different classes that include that skills development, interviewing techniques, etc. So yeah, this is a part of the experience when you're initially onboarded. When you come into the ecosystem, you get kind of entered into a communication queue, if you will, where we nurture you across the initial benchmarks or finish lines, if you will. So when we talk to you, it's not just, hey, we know you're here because you're professionally curious, but we also want to ask you, some of those other things. Are you prepared? Do you have your resume ready to rock and roll? Do we need to orient you towards some of these workshops? Do you have benefits? Do you have, do you have a mentor? Things along those lines. So we really try to blend in those wraparound services and support components that lead the individual towards, again, that successful interaction with an opportunity or with a hiring manager.
One of the things that the caller and I did talk about were some of these other services, right? Particularly, and these are just value-added resources. So you're not just a resume kind of clearinghouse for employers. You're not just here to help us with, when I say us, I'm talking about service members, right? Right. Veterans and service members. You're not just here to help with fashioning a resume, although that's a huge part of it, because that's sort of what gets you a foot in the door with a lot of companies. But there's also these other aspects of and the other resources that are available through RecruitMilitary, mentorship. Talk about them and maybe a few other of the other resources that service members might find with you all.
Yeah, absolutely. Renee, if you don't mind, I'll field that one real quick. So during that intake conversation that we're having with every service member, we ask them those questions. Now we RecruitMilitary proper stay true to our core competency, which is that employment connectivity side of things, but it takes a village. We partner with what we consider to be the absolute top tier organizations that operate in certain categories so that we can make sure that we augment the offering to give the end user, the job seeker, the service member a well-rounded experience and to make sure that they're truly prepared. So when it comes to mentorship, we work with Still Serving Veterans is a big organization that we work with. They operate on a pretty large scale. Veterati, ACP, American Corporate Partners. So these organizations all specialize exclusively in mentorship. And some, they're not all exactly the same. Not every mentor outfit is the same. When we look at an outfit like ACP, they are phenomenal when it comes to connecting you, the job seeker, with an individual that is going down the same path that you're looking to go down. So if you want to be a wealth manager, they're going to pair you up with somebody in a leadership role at JP Morgan Chase or Wells Fargo, one of the big, financial firms. But you really need to know that direction to a certain degree. You have to have already done that soul searching. And if you're anything like me, you didn't necessarily do that right away, immediately leaving service, or even if you're Guard Reserve right now, you're still trying to figure out exactly what is going to be your passion. Some of the other organizations like Still Serving Veterans and Veterati are more generalized, where you can simply annotate, like, I would like to be mentored on the following topics, and they're going to pair you with like items, like individuals. So mentorship is a really big part. I have a mentor. I'm pretty well rooted in my career, but I still have a mentor. I need a soundboard. I need somebody smarter than me, somebody that's walked in those shoes before, that's broken through walls or barriers to, for professional growth or otherwise. So mentorship is a really important part of this, just like, the resumes are too. The resume isn't going to get you the job, but it's going to get you considered for the next conversation. All of these elements feed into that, that kind of that final outcome, which is you're sitting in front of the hiring manager for your final interview, or you're shaking hands because you got the offer. So everything that we're doing is in support of that, when we go back to those three verticals as far as how we facilitate the connection. So mentorship's a big one. Resume and other workshop provisions is a big one to make sure you're prepared. And then benefits is a big one. There's, plenty of organizations out there that are supporting along those lines, but we have paired up specifically with DAV. Disabled American Veterans. They're over 100 years old now. They just celebrated their centennial, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. Great organization. They're on Capitol Hill. They're part of the Big Four in terms of VSOs. And when service members need any kind of support with benefits, helping get a claim pushed through the VA if it's stuck, or just general advocacy, we have the DAV there to work in conjunction with the VA to make sure that service member gets what they need in terms of access to benefits and other resources related to their service.
Amazing. Great. Thank you. Thank you. Renee, was there anything else you wanted to add to that? I know that I kind of asked a kind of a multi-part question there, and I can't remember all of it. I think Chris kind of covered a lot of that ground.
I do that.
Yeah, about the expanded partnerships and things like that, and the additional resorships. Was there anything particular on the website that you wanted to share? We did cover the workshops and those resources.
That was a big one.
Yeah, that was a big one. Okay.
Yeah, the other one that I would potentially recommend would be maybe the job search. Casey, if you're able, could we go to the job board and just I'd love to show the difference between searching by keyword as opposed to searching for MOS. So the example that we have right here is using keyword, which is always ideal, because keep in mind, these job descriptions are written in civilian terminology. So keywords are going to be pretty key. So you can see the criteria that we've got here. We've got HR or human resources, and then we're looking at a 30-mile radius of Atlanta, Georgia. So when we look at the yield here, it's over on the top left side. You see 1,971 jobs. So that provides, your initial batch of roles, if you will. And you can see on the left-hand side, there's additional layers of filters that you can apply to make that search more narrow. 2,000 jobs is far too many for one person to source through. So you want to continue to whittle that down. You can break it down by category, by brand, by, zip code. There's criteria there that I would encourage anybody to kind of tinker with. There's more than one way to perform this search, but for the sake of looking at volume, and for anybody that might be wondering, when do I use, you can see their compensation as well. You can see there's some pretty exciting comp levels there, depending on the organization and role you want to go to. So we do ask organizations to provide that. Some do, some don't. So bear with us in that regard. We're at the mercy of how they operate. But bottom line, you can see here, by using keywords, we get a pretty healthy search yield. If I could ask Casey to go back into the search, the keyword data field there real quick, and go back, and instead of human resources or HR, to do 42 alpha, which is an example that we would use from the Army. With a 42 alpha is a human resources specialist. Okay, yeah, so from right here, so I'll just pick up from here. So the thing that I want to highlight here is that there's different ways to perform this a similar search. So we're looking at HR or human resources, and for this example, we'll use an Army 42 Alpha, which is a human resources specialist. So as you click on that, you can see it will still produce results, but because it's relying exclusively on the machine learning and the past behavior, the search yield is always going to be more modest. It's always going to be smaller. So when and where you can make the translation from MOS to civilian terminology, those keywords are always going to produce a higher search yield than using your MOS. But for some of us that are, we don't know anything other than our MOS, or we want to stay within the confines of our MOS, you can perform a search using either criteria.
And you can also expand results by being open to remote roles as well. So some of those desolate areas we were talking about earlier, if you were to look for human resources and remote, it would populate some of the remote opportunities as well. So Chris, if you want to walk them through, we can show some of the remote opportunities that are available as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If you wouldn't mind, Casey, clear out that location data right there. And if you go back over to the search term where 42 alpha is, you can plug in remote anywhere actually, but if you put it in the keywords, it will bring up every remote opportunity that has the word remote within it. So when we use this as search criteria, we'll have to add additional filters, but if you were to hit search on this, you'll see we have over 21,000 remote work opportunities. So for those of you that are in more of those remote areas where maybe there isn't a bustling metropolitan area with a bunch of different corporate representation, you can take your work with you. You can take the opportunity with you. Remote work is a very real thing and it's here to stay. So we tend to have tens of thousands of remote work opportunities at any point in time. And as you can see here on the left-hand side, we can continue to filter by that category. So whether you're wanting to do engineering, human resources, IT, simply by using that remote keyword search criteria, you're gonna see the various opportunities that don't require you to be in a physical setting.
Yeah, I think that's relatively important as well for our military spouses who have to adapt to portability. So we try to make sure that in the resource page for the spouses that the search is already there. It will say remote opportunities in the resource area.
Further down the screen, I saw that it kind of gave a little reminder. We'll call it an ad for lack of a better term, but it's just about upcoming career fairs.
Yep.
So when they hit on those links, are they able to sign up for the fair? That just gives them general information?
No, that is direct connectivity to the registration portal. So
wow,
you can see here your big red button, register now. And from here, while we're talking about events, this will give you the who, what, where, when, why. You've got your flyer right there, some general metrics in terms of the impact of the event. So that's more on the employer side. I wouldn't go down that path simply because it's geared exclusively towards the companies that want to participate and buy a table there.
Right.
To not throw anybody off, because we want to make sure all the service members understand everything that we do is completely cost free to them. But the employers are the ones that are subsidizing this. So this is where you can see all of the pertinent information relative to this particular event, this market, the venue. If you go to the top, if you scroll all the way to the top and on the left-hand side, you'll see those three lines right next to Recruit Military. If you click on that, that's your drop-down menu. If you click on Job Fairs, this will bring you to the full schedule. And directly under this, in the kind of faded print, you can see View All Job Fairs directly under that search. If you click on that, you can see the full schedule mapped all the way through December of 2024.
That's incredible. That's great.
Definitely. So I have a question.
Go ahead, Shondria.
Yeah, I have a question. Chris or Renee, either of you can speak to this. So for employers who are looking for talent, looking for job seekers, how do they connect with you all?
Yeah, it can be as simple as just going to RecruitMilitary.com, and I mentioned that little chat bot. That chat bot will give you the prompt to connect live with one of our representatives, the same way that it would for a job seeker. So when you get to RecruitMilitary.com, at the very bottom of the screen, there's a contact us. We have, phone number, email. You can connect with a representative in real time. Over there, more towards the right under help, if you go to contact us. Yep, right there. And you'll see everything from the mailing address to telephone number, etc. And you can also engage via this chatbot right here. You identify as a job seeker or as an employer, and the system will give you the option to connect live with a person in real time. So now, granted, we are operating primarily Eastern Standard Time. So if it's after 5:30 Monday through Friday, it may be until the next business day that we get back to you, but we'll get right back to you. So anybody that wants to get a hold of us, call us, email us, connect directly through the website. There's a handful of different ways that we can get connected.
And it's really for any size business, right? I mean, I know,
Absolutely.
when we did the search thing, there were a lot of, Marriott and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and some of the big, a lot of very big companies. But this can also benefit veteran-owned small businesses as well, who are looking to hire other veterans or
100%.
military spouses, and so on, right?
Yes, that's correct. All shapes and sizes. Now, you're going to see representation from the big brands. We were talking earlier about, when you were filling out your profile, Dan, you had to think back on like security clearance. Do I have one still? Did it expire? We work with a lot of the, the government contractors, the Lockheed Martins, the Northrop Grummans, Boeing, so on, so forth. But we're also working with mom and pop, single location, brick and mortar, HVAC or plumbing outfit. There is representation from every single industry that you can think of, and the organization size goes from small, medium, large. It is not a one size fits all. So we have something for everybody. So that goes for both the employers and the job seekers.
That's amazing. It really is. I definitely think there's certainly a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot.
It's an incredibly powerful tool. I mean, RecruitMilitary has really created a very powerful tool for veterans and spouses that are in the market, and for employers as well. I mean, it really is. It's not just for the beneficiaries, which are service members and their families, but also for the employers as well, because they get quality employees.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we're a recruiting firm. We just so happen to specialize within the military niche.
Right.
So we want to make sure that these organizations understand, the value and the return on investment of putting personnel towards this mission. These are not random candidates. They're not charity cases. We don't look at it that way. We look at this as absolute top tier talent. The United States government has invested countless resources and training to make each of us stemming from the community optimal within the capacity that we serve. And any company, I don't care what industry, I don't care what they do, any company can benefit from having that sort of talent. And that's the epiphany that we're trying to deliver every single day. Our representatives, our consultants, our employer-facing team is making over 100,000 phone calls every single month to corporate America, just challenging them. Hey, what does your military hiring initiative look like? How many service members did you hire last year? Always trying to push that envelope, trying to push them a little bit further. And the great news is that we've come such a long way just in the last decade or two, to where we don't have to twist anybody's arm to convince them that it's a really good thing to bring military talent on. It's not about philanthropy or patriotism or altruism. It just makes good business sense. You could use more leaders. Anybody could use more leaders. Anybody could use a talented demographic that comes from such robust real world and professional experience. So again, we're just here to bridge the gap, and we use this technology and all the resources and platforms and widgets that we have to just make sure that it's as easy as possible for both parties to have that engagement and ideally the good outcome. When the service member gets the job, that company has a new employee, everybody's happy, everybody wins. It's a really good life cycle.
Speaking of those connections, what kind of numbers are you tracking in terms of the numbers of veterans and family members or spouses that you've helped? Over the years. That's
a big one. I can throw out some anecdotal numbers simply because over the course of the last decade or so, we've merged a couple organizations together. Actually, we're actually a collective of 3 different brands, each of which was operating somewhat autonomously and making really big impact in the space. But an enterprise number that I'm pretty darn proud of. We just celebrated 120,000 offers extended as a direct result of our hiring events. So that's what I mean when I say low stress, high impact. Right. These are not resource events. It's not fluff. The companies that are there have opportunities in hand that they want to talk about. So the outcome of these events is interviews and offers. That's what we want to know. That's what we're asking them. So we survey all parties, job seekers and employers. And that's a really great milestone that we're really proud of. We've seen, again, it's really hard to nail down, but hundreds of thousands of successful outcomes as a result of operating within our job board. Thousands of service members go through our placement services every single year. So it's, collectively, I'd say, if we want to stick with something, like connectivity, we have facilitated the connection between roughly 1.6 million members from the military community with roughly 16 to 17,000 companies across the country and globe. So those are the two audiences. We've mashed them together. A lot of really great outcomes.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. A new question just kind of came back. I'm sorry, Shondria, you look like you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say, it seems like the connectivity piece is what separates RecruitMilitary from similar organizations alongside the mentorship. That's my personal tidbit.
Yeah. I mean, it's enough to dangle a job posting out there and to give somebody the opportunity to apply to it. And, both parties kind of do this, but what we have found is that when both parties are nurtured and truly prepared for the interaction, the odds of a successful outcome are exponentially increased. It's fishing with dynamite when both parties are prepared. So yeah, we make that a big part of what we do to ensure that the system works. Like, this has to work. We exist based on that performance. If these employers are not finding success, if these service members are not finding success, they'll go somewhere else. And we understand that. And that's what drives us. That's what motivates us to make sure that we have something cutting edge, something that works, and something that works specifically for this sort of exchange for these audiences.
Thank you. Renee, I wanted to go back to something earlier about the resume thing. So when a service member uploads a resume, it goes through the widgets within RecruitMilitary. So let's say I revise my resume, right? And I do an update or whatever it might be. Now, even though it created a kind of, if I use the resume profile, out of my profile, that's one thing, but then I uploaded another one. Is there something that happens that sort of re-triggers a fresh look if I upload a new resume? I mean, or does my profile kind of stay static? I'd like to think
you have full autonomy and access to your profile, and we actually recommend that you stay, up to date with all of the information that you're putting in there, especially the parameters around location, what you want, when you're available to be selected, or when you're available to start work. So that'll uptick some of the outreach as well. You can pull the old resume out, and you can attach the new resume right in there. So you can remove the old, add the new. You can add more than one resume. You have a lot of wiggle room there to do so.
And to go beyond that,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Darren. I was just going to say, with those real-time modifications, again, every time a search is performed by those corporate partners, it's combing not just the profile, but all of the words in your resume as well. So if you have two resumes, one's very up-to-date, one's generalized, the system is still algorithmically combing everything. So if you add, it's being combed as well in real time as future searches are performed.
Got it. That's very helpful to know, because that obviously that's, again, we're talking about trying to maximize the opportunity to connect, right? And of course, what we're talking about is that this is we're putting our lives, if you will, our work experience on paper. But I'd like to believe that companies aren't just hiring our data points that have been accumulated and set down, but they're hiring real people. Right. And it's the opportunity that in the end that the veteran, the service member, and the company connect, and they close the deal, so to speak. And it's not just about our skill sets or about our experience or whether, all of those kinds of things, which are helpful and valuable because those are skill sets that a company needs. But we're also looking at values and who we are as individuals and people in the end, aren't we?
That's right. Yeah. A company's going to hire who they like. The person sitting across from them we need to understand the black and white elements of this, where, those keywords and those algorithms, like, it's a force to be reckoned with. Like, it's there, it's not something to fight. But by understanding those best practices and incorporating them into your flow, into your profile, into how you are going to present yourself, that is what will get you across the eyes initially of of that individual that might be considering you for that next conversation. So, like I said, the resume doesn't get you the job, but a resume is you can't not have the resume. But the average recruiter is going to spend 6 seconds looking at a resume. That's not enough time to know a person.
Mhm.
That's where the keywords come in, and the algorithms and the applicant tracking system, so that you can stand out as somebody that should be very considered for that more personal conversation, that personal professional conversation that will naturally come next. That'll be the interview, will be the result of a successful resume or job application.
Wonderful, wonderful. As we kind of bring our podcast to a close, wanted to give you and Renee the last word. What any kind of parting advice, wisdom for our service members and their spouses that are either in the marketplace or thinking about it, or leaning forward, thinking about a transition within the next, I don't know, 6 months, year, maybe even 2 years out?
Yeah. I would say take the time to do some inward reflection. Take the time to figure out exactly what makes you passionate. If you're going to be if you have a career and it's outside of uniform, when your feet hit the floor every morning, you need to be able to get behind a mission. So I recommend to everybody to do that due diligence. When you're looking at an opportunity or an organization, really look under the hood. Try to get a good understanding of culture. Make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you. Otherwise, you're going to end up dissatisfied at some point, and we'll be here. We'll be here if you need to make that pivot. But we want to make sure that we can connect you with something really meaningful on the front end, but only you know what you're passionate about. So I would challenge anybody listening to just make sure that you're doing your own due diligence and doing that soul searching to find out what motivates you.
And that's when you're ready. We want to invite you to announce your presence in the workforce. And that metric for success, again, is by creating the professional profile. So just getting started, and then we will ensure that we set you up for success so you can truly optimize everything that we've covered in this last hour.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you for introducing us and talking about this wonderful platform and this tool that our veterans and service members have in the marketplace. I mean, it's really just a kind of a phenomenal element that adds to the veterans and spouses' ability to look for employment. But you're absolutely correct. I mean, I think there is some of that soul searching that needs to happen, and really to kind of find out and to answer those deeper questions about what's next. What I aspire to, what do I hope to do, in that next step in transition.
It's our honor, and we appreciate everything that you and the team do at RCTAA program, because we're here to help get them connected, but you guys really steward them to that point where we can get them ready. So it truly does take a village. So we appreciate the opportunity to collaborate and work in conjunction to make sure that our brothers and sisters and their families have success, regardless of, what their service is or what they want to do moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you again. If you made it through this podcast and you want the link for RecruitMilitary.com, it'll be in their description. And I think we posted a QR code, and it's all over the place. But head over to RecruitMilitary.com, set up a profile, sign up, upload your resume. Or if you're just looking to just see what's out there, use their job seeker tool that's on there. Take advantage of some of their resources. So Chris, Renee, thank you again very much. It's been wonderful to have you this morning. Shondria, it's good to see you all the way over in Alabama. Take care over there. But
Same to you.
Yeah, thank you again. And Casey, behind the scenes, Thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right.